Dong, a small village on the banks of the Red River, has long been known as a peaceful, prosperous land. Every morning, when the sun has just risen above the green bamboo groves, the mist still covers the fields. The sound of roosters crowing echoes throughout the village, calling people to get up and prepare for a day of work. The Red River is like a red silk strip winding around the village, bringing alluvium to enrich the fields, feeding many generations of hardworking, simple-minded people. The people of Phu Dong are not rich but live peacefully, respect loyalty, observe etiquette, and live together like brothers and sisters. During harvest season, the whole village harvests rice together, and on festival days, they set up tents, cook cakes, and dance with drums. Children play happily under the bamboo shade of the village, while the elderly sit on the sidewalk and tell fairy tales. Life here is simple but warm, like a gentle song in the heart of Vietnam. However, in the middle of that village, there is a special woman. Her name was Nguyen Thi Tam. She was over 30 that year but still unmarried. It was not because she was unlucky or poor, but because fate had tested her since childhood. Her parents died early. She lived alone, day and night supporting herself. The villagers affectionately called her Orphan Lady Tam. Despite her loneliness, she still lived a gentle, hard-working life, growing vegetables and weaving to make a living. What she desired most in life was not gold or fame, but only a child, a creature to love, to continue her bloodline, so that when she was old, someone would call her mother. But that desire was never fulfilled. Every day, she still went to the fields to work, came home to light the lamp to embroider, and whispered prayers to the heavens. The villagers, especially the old women, some of them comforted her. The heavens have not yet loved you, but you are so good and virtuous. Surely they will bless you. Some people said, she is different from others. Maybe her fate is to give birth to extraordinary things. But year after year, Mrs. Tam was still alone, with only her figure and her dream. Until one day, it was an early spring morning, a light drizzle fell on the ground. The air was cool and pure like the first dew of the day. Mrs. Tam carried her hoe to the field early. The field had not been planted yet this season. The soil was still moist, soft, and easy to dig. She intended to dig the land behind the fence to plant some herbs to prepare for the lean season. While she was bending down to dig the soil, her eyes suddenly stopped at something strange. In the middle of the muddy field, there was a very large footprint, so large that it took 2 adults to stand in it to fill it. That footprint was deeply imprinted, as if a giant had just passed by. There were no other tracks. There was no path. There was no skid mark. There was only one, as if the sky had just set foot on the ground. Mrs. Tam was stunned, her heart pounding. Although she was confused, a strange feeling of warmth rose in her heart, as if a cool breeze was blowing, making her shiver slightly. She looked around. There was no one. The sun was rising, covering the green rice fields with golden light. Unable to resist her curiosity, she tiptoed forward, placing her foot in the middle of that large footprint. Suddenly, a light beam of light flashed through her mind. Her body felt light. A faint fragrance like the scent of lotus wafted past. She returned home in a strange mood. That night, she had a strange dream. In her dream, she saw an old man with white hair and beard, wearing a long robe, holding a bamboo stick, smiling kindly and saying, "You have a kind heart. Heaven and earth have witnessed it. A heavenly general will be reincarnated in your body. Nurture him carefully. Do not be afraid of worldly words." When she woke up, she still remembered every word the old man said. And strangely, just a few days later, she began to feel her body changing. Her eyes were brighter, her skin was rosy, her health was full. Then she discovered she was pregnant. From the day Mrs. Tam discovered she was pregnant, her life seemed to have turned a new page. The joy of becoming a mother warmed the heart of a woman who had been lonely for so many years. But along with that happiness was a constant worry. How would she raise the child alone? And if it was a heavenly being, would she have the strength to take on this great mission? Time passed, the fetus in her womb grew, but also unusually. More than a year had passed, and the child had not yet been born. 2 years, then 3 years. The villagers began to gossip. Some were afraid, saying she was carrying a demon fetus. Some sympathized, secretly bringing medicinal herbs to help. Mrs. Tam remained patient, silently enduring. Every evening, she lit incense on her parents' altar, praying to the heavens, "Please heaven and earth witness my heart. No matter what, I am willing to give birth and raise this child to the end." Even though her body was heavy and increasingly tired, she did not rest. In the morning, she went to the fields to weed. In the afternoon, she spun silk and wove cloth. One day it rained heavily. She came home soaked, bent over to light the fire to cook a pot of thin porridge. At that moment, there was a slight movement in her belly. The baby moved slightly, as if sharing her hardship with her mother. She put her hand on her belly, smiled. "My child, I don't need anything more than you. As long as you are healthy, I will do everything." Finally, after 3 years, 3 months and 10 days, she gave birth to a baby boy. That night, the sky was full of stars. The moon was bright. The whole village seemed to be awakened by the sound of a baby crying. But no, the baby didn't cry. The baby lay still in the cloth, eyes wide open looking around, eyes as clear as a stream. Mrs. Tam held her baby in her arms, tears falling, not because of sadness, but because her heart was bursting with happiness. The baby grew up in the care of his mother and the curiosity of the whole village. But strangely, month after month, year after year, he could not roll over, could not crawl, could not speak, could not laugh. He lay motionless, his eyes always following his mother. The villagers were initially sympathetic, but then gradually became suspicious and criticized. Some people sneered, 3 years of birth, 3 years of lying still. Maybe it is karma. Some people said harshly, why raise a child that does not know how to call mother? But Mrs. Tam never once gave up. Every day she still regularly fed her child porridge, wiped his face, and sang lullabies. At night, she told him fairy tales about Sun Tin, Tui Tin, about Mayan Team, about Hung Vong founding the country. The boy did not say anything, but his eyes grew brighter and deeper, as if containing something profound. Then one time, when she mentioned the story of Thatch San saving the princess, she asked, "Do you want to be strong like Thatch San?" The boy suddenly blinked, his lips moving slightly. Even though she couldn't make a sound, she could feel it. Her son was listening. He was alive. Day after day, she worked hard to raise him. Many people were touched, secretly helping her with rice and cassava. An old man in the village, who was good at astronomy, once came to her house and said, "That child is not ordinary. He came from heaven." She just bowed her head in gratitude. Although her heart was fluttering, she didn't let that make her delusional. For her, as long as her son was alive and had a mother, that was enough, until one day, the whole country shook. Returning to that fateful moment, where the giant footprint appeared on the land by the rice field, few people expected that the moment Mrs. Tam placed her bare foot there would open a chain of events that would change the fate of an entire nation. From that day on, her body gradually changed. Every morning when she woke up, she felt healthier, her spirit was uplifted, her skin was as bright and rosy as a young girl's. Many people in the village even teased, "This Mrs. Tam is truly struck by the wind. She is getting younger and younger." Only she knew that a life was growing in her heart. At first, she was also skeptical. No husband, no intimate relationship. How could she be pregnant? But the feeling in her heart was real. Every small movement in her body gave her a clear premonition. There was a baby growing every day. And strangely, she did not feel tired like other pregnant women. Day by day, she became more and more attached to that life as a part of her body, as a part of her destiny. As time passed, her belly gradually grew. But when 9 months and 10 days had passed without her giving birth, she began to worry. A year passed, then 2 years. The villagers were initially curious, then confused, then scared. They called the baby in her belly abnormal, a monster from heaven. Some people bluntly advised her to go to the temple to terminate the pregnancy. Some said, "Bury it, or it will bring disaster to the whole village." But Mrs. Tam only gently replied, "This is my child. It was given to me by heaven. No matter what happens, I will keep it." Her determination made many people bow their heads. Some kind people secretly brought cakes and medicine to nourish her. The oldest man in the village, who had traveled to many places, looked at her and nodded, saying, "Maybe this is a spirit fetus from the gods. In the future, it will accomplish great things." 3 years passed silently. During those 3 years, despite her big belly, she did not stop working. Her calloused hands still tended each row of vegetables, patched each seam of clothes. Her skinny legs still waded through deep mud, carrying water to water each mustard plant. She told herself, "You must live well. You must be strong enough to welcome your child into the world." On a late winter night, When the full moon was shining brightly overhead, Mrs. Tam went into labor. The pain came rapidly, but she did not panic. She delivered the baby herself in the small house, without any help from anyone. Near dawn, in the quiet space, a child made a sound, not a cry, but a light breath. The eyes opened wide, clear as the surface of a lake in the early morning, looking straight at her. That child was the crystallization of faith, of sacred maternal love, and of destiny. The next day, the villagers came. Some were curious, some were disdainful. But when they saw the child, they all fell silent. The child was as beautiful as a bronze statue, with rosy skin, eyes as bright as stars, and a strangely noble temperament. Some old women whispered, "This is not a normal person. He is a saint descended to earth." But the strangeness did not stop there. The child did not cry, did not laugh, nor did he know how to roll over or crawl like normal children. He just lay still, his eyes always following his mother's every step, as if remembering her every sound, every breath. That made the villagers bewildered again. Some people spoke harshly. Some people shunned the mother and son. But Mrs. Tam remained steadfast. She knew this boy was the greatest gift of her life, and heaven would not let that mother down. That child, Mrs. Tam's son, later called Giong, grew up day by day in a small thatched house on the edge of a rice field. But the boy was completely different from any other child in the village. He could not laugh, could not talk, could not crawl, could not turn over. He just lay still on the bamboo mat, his big, round, deep eyes following his mother's every move. Those eyes were not opaque like a newborn baby's, but bright and clear like autumn water, as if containing something very far away. Mrs. Tam never complained once. She loved her son with all her heart, with the extraordinary patience that only mothers who had experienced despair could have. Every morning, she bathed her son with warm water boiled from old coriander leaves. Every evening, she told him fairy tales, her voice soft and slow, as if lulling the boy into a world both familiar and strange. She recited each verse of poetry, each prayer, each lullaby that her mother used to sing. Even though the child did not respond, she believed that her son understood. The villagers did not think so. They began to call him the mute boy. Children stayed away, and adults sighed whenever they passed by. Once, a man in the village, rude and hot-tempered, bluntly said, "Raising him is a waste of rice. It would be less painful to abandon him." Mrs. Tam did not reply. She just bowed her head, carried her child into the house, and hugged him tightly. Many nights, she sat in front of her house, looking at the moonlight reflecting on the brickyard, whispering, "My child, if you were an ordinary person, I would still love you. If you were an extraordinary person, I would love you even more. As long as you exist, I can live the rest of my life." Then one day, a small event happened, but to her, it was bigger than the universe. That was when she put the bowl of porridge on the mat and turned to get a towel to wipe it. When she turned back, she saw that the boy's hand had lightly touched the bowl. Although it was just a slow, trembling movement, to her, it was a miracle. She cried out, "My child, you know you're hungry, right?" From that day on, she realized that her son was not completely indifferent. Every time she called Zhang's name, his eyes lit up. When he heard the flute of the shepherd boy in the yard, he turned his head to listen. When she cried silently, he stared as if to ask, "Why are you so sad, Mom?" Mrs. Tam took care of him even more persistently. She began to let her son smell different kinds of incense, listen to the sound of drums, listen to the lyrics of folk songs, listen to the sound of rice pounding. She said, "If you can't speak, then listen. If you can't walk, I'll carry you to see the world." Once, she carried Zhang to the village communal house, where a ceremony to worship heaven was being held. When the communal house drum sounded, the boy's leg jerked slightly. The person next to him saw it and was surprised. That boy just moved. From then on, occasionally, a few villagers would secretly come to see the dumb child who could hear. Some even told each other, "Maybe he really is a heavenly being." But others remained conservative, continuing to avoid the mother and child. But it didn't matter, because at this time, Mrs. Tam had enough faith. In her heart, one day, the child would rise up like a bamboo tree overcoming the flood and create a miracle. When John was 3 years old, the country began to enter a period of chaos. Bad news from the border continued to spread. The invaders from the north were increasingly encroaching. At first, they were just small groups of soldiers harassing the border, but later they began to form battle formations, occupying and looting villages and enslaving people. Merchants from the Lang Son and Chao Bang regions brought back news. The invaders' flags were red all over the sky. The sound of war drums resounded in the mountains and forests, and wherever they passed, they left behind corpses, burnt houses, and abandoned fields. The people were terrified and rushed to the south. The ragged crowd, carrying each other, passed through Phu Dong village. Their eyes were dazed and covered in smoke, causing everyone in the village to shiver. The court was in chaos. The sixth Hung King worried day and night. The brave generals and soldiers suffered many casualties in the resistance battles. Many northern citadels were lost in just 1 week. The enemy army was not only strong but also fierce and skilled in fighting. They had large war horses, sharp weapons, and used fire and iron traps, making it difficult for our army to resist. The royal council held an urgent meeting. King Hung ordered the writing of an edict to call for the wise, sending envoys everywhere, from the plains to the mountains, to find talented people, good generals, and outstanding people to help the country. The edict was written on silk paper, stamped with a red seal, and announced with the sound of drums and flags from the capital to every village. One hot summer day, the envoy of the royal court rode to Phu Dong village. He wore a purple robe, had a sword on his back, and rode a white horse. Drums and gongs resounded loudly in the communal house yard. The villagers gathered in large numbers. The envoy raised the edict high and read aloud. The king's edict. The world is in danger. The invaders are cruel. Heaven and earth are angry. Now the court urgently calls for talented and virtuous people, with extraordinary strength and complete loyalty, to stand up to help the country defeat the invaders. Whoever can take on the important responsibility, please come forward and accept the order. The country will reward you greatly. The villagers were in an uproar. Some were afraid, others whispered, "Who in our village is like that?" An old man said, "Only a God can save the country at this time." The messenger stayed for 3 days, but no one dared to accept. On the last night, he prepared to leave, his heart heavy with disappointment. At that moment, in a small house on the edge of the village, a voice was heard. A clear, loud voice, echoing in the quiet night. "Mother, invite the messenger in for me." The voice was like a thunderclap. Mrs. Tam was stunned, dropping the bowl she was holding. She turned around and saw her son, Giong, sitting up, his eyes shining like stars, his mouth smiling for the first time in his life. She burst into tears, her mouth trembling as she called, my son can speak now." At the moment, Mrs. Tam trembled as she walked. The messenger and several villagers also ran to the small house. On the bamboo bed, Giong, the child who had been lying still like a block of wood for 3 years, was now sitting firmly, his face radiant, his eyes sparkling. He looked at the messenger, his voice clear and strong. "I beg you to go back and tell the king. Please forge an iron armor, an iron horse, and a very strong and large iron whip. When everything is ready, I will go to battle, defeat the invaders, and save the country." The messenger and the villagers stood still. No one expected the child to say such words. An old man was moved and whispered, "Heaven has not cut off the way for our people to live." The messenger immediately mounted his horse, without stopping, and galloped straight to the capital. Along the way, he told his soldiers to send a message in advance. When he returned to the court, he knelt at the king's feet, presented a memorial, and recounted the whole incident. King Hung pondered. The court officials were skeptical and skeptical. Some believed it was a sacred sign of the gods. Some sneered, saying that the villagers were making it up. But in the face of the dire situation, King Hung decided to put his faith in miracles. He issued an edict to order the best craftsmen in the country to use the precious iron in the warehouse to quickly forge a set of armor, a horse, and a whip. All must be very large, very strong, worthy of an extraordinary person. Immediately, the court mobilized blacksmiths from famous craft villages, from Doi Tam, Chong Sun to Trang Din, to gather in the capital. The entire forge was ablaze day and night. Hammers were banging loudly. The sound of fire echoed throughout the palace. Each red-hot iron ingot was cast into horseshoes, shoulder armor, and sword backs. Hundreds of people worked tirelessly. Meanwhile, in Phu Dong village, Giong began to change. Every day, he ate a huge amount of food, 10 times more than an adult. The rice pot was empty as soon as it was put down. The big jar of water was just filled and then emptied. Without anyone telling them, Some contributed rice, some brought vegetables, some brought fish, some gave clothes. Fudong village became a place where they joined hands to nurture the national hero. Every day, Giong grew a little taller, his voice became louder, his eyes became sharper. He began to stand up by himself, walk, then run. He pulled up small bamboo bushes, lifted rocks, and swung the broom like a spear. Before long, Giong was a head taller than the adults, with bulging muscles and a dignified demeanor. The children in the village whispered to him, calling him a warrior descended from heaven. When the armor, horse, and whip were forged, the court had people carry them on a large ox cart back to Fudong village. The villagers came out in large numbers like a festival. Giong stepped out, looking as dignified as a true warrior. He raised his hand to take the iron whip, as light as holding a stick. The armor fit perfectly. The iron horse was pulled out into the middle of the communal house yard. The horse's body was cast from shiny black iron, its four hooves were strong, its mouth was wide open, and its fire teeth were shining. He stepped forward and put his hand on the horse's neck. "Tomorrow, we will go to battle together." That night, Mrs. Tam sat beside her son, silently. She knew the day of separation was coming. She did not cry. She just held her son's hand and said, "You were born to do great things. I believe in you. I do not need anything. I only hope that you will live up to the mission given to you by heaven." Giong bowed his head and kissed his mother's hand for the first time. Even though it was just a light touch, it made Mrs. Tam feel fulfilled for the rest of her life. The next morning, the sky was clear without a cloud. Giong put on his armor, carried his whip, and stepped onto the horse's back. He turned his head to look at the villagers, his eyes determined, his voice booming like thunder. "For the country and the people, I will go destroy the enemy." After hearing the messenger report the story of the 3-year-old boy from Fudong village speaking and asking for weapons to go to battle, King Hung was still shocked. Many mixed emotions arose in his heart: surprise, doubt, hope. He stepped down from the palace, thoughtfully walked around the stone-paved dragon yard, gently stroking his long beard. None of his courtiers dared to speak. Then suddenly, the king stopped, his eyes determined. The time has come. If it is truly a person sent by heaven to save the country, then I cannot let this opportunity pass. That very night, King Hung summoned the Council of Generals and Quan Te Kong. The order was issued. The whole country mobilized the best blacksmiths. The famous iron casting villages had to send experts, and all precious materials were brought to the capital. Three things had to be completed: a sturdy iron armor that could withstand strong impacts, protecting the entire body of the giant and iron horse, able to withstand heavy weight, durable, and able to breathe fire. A long, thick iron whip, strong enough to swing across the sky, knocking down hundreds of soldiers. The very next morning, the king's command was announced by beating drums and blowing horns throughout the regions. Doi Tam village in Hanam, a place with a tradition of forging drums, offered to make a warning bell for the army. Trang Din village, famous for its statue casting art, sent 3 senior artisans to cast the horse body. And Chong Sun village, which has a profession of forging plowshares and sharp knives, brought a portable furnace to the imperial city. Everywhere, fire burned brightly. Piles of red coals like small suns were lit day and night. Each hammer sound echoed, piercing the urgent and sacred atmosphere. The blacksmith masters, the old men with white hair and beards, and the strong young men with the aspiration to protect the country all contributed their efforts. Every time a piece of armor was formed, the craftsman clasped his hands and prayed, "May this armor cover the holy person's body and destroy the evil enemy." The whip was cast from refined iron, tempered through fire for 9 days and 9 nights, and forged by 7 people in shifts. The iron horse, not just a block of metal, was carved with dragon and cloud patterns. Its body was more than 4 meters long, and its head was as big as a war drum. In particular, the horse's mouth was designed so that when a fire was lit in its belly, it could spit out hot air and sparks, simulating a fire dragon. After 39 days, the 3 treasures were completed. King Hung personally came out to see them. He stepped in front of the iron horse, stroked the horse's body, and nodded in satisfaction. If this thing really falls into the hands of a talented person, It will surely destroy chaos. The troop of 10 chariots was mobilized to carry the three treasures towards Fudong village. Flags were hung all over the road. Trumpets and drums were played, and people on both sides of the road came out to watch, their hearts filled with hope. Many people whispered, "The god is about to appear." And in Fudong village, where Giong was ready, the sound of horses' hooves, the sound of cheers, the sound of drums of war were about to sound. From the day he began to speak, Giong seemed to have transformed. Every morning, Mrs. Tam saw her son taller than the day before, and his body had grown enormously. The old clothes gradually became tight, and the straw sandals woven the day before no longer fit his feet. The villagers were more and more amazed every day. Some said that Giong had grown a year in one night, that Giong's meals became a village event. At first, all he needed was one big pot of rice. Then it increased to 2, then 3. One day, Mrs. Tam sighed because she had washed all the rice in the jar. But before she could worry, a neighbor brought a basket of rice, saying, "Raising the saint is the responsibility of the whole village." Others brought vegetables, others brought eggs, chicken, fish. Gradually, the whole village of Fudong formed a voluntary network, raising Giong as if raising a hope. Giong ate well and slept little. Every morning, he woke up very early, stretching under the sunlight like a bamboo tree growing after the rain. He trained by lifting rocks, running around the village, swinging bamboo sticks, pushing large rocks out of the fields. The villagers gathered every morning to watch. The atmosphere was like a festival. Children shouted his name. The old people sat under the banyan tree praying. The young people began to call him the warrior Giong. Every evening, Giong sat by the fire with his mother. Although Mrs. Tam did not understand who her son was, she knew that something great was coming. Giong often held his mother's hand, his eyes as deep as the night sea. "Don't worry, mother. I will do the right thing." It is said that one night, Giong dreamed of a man in a white robe, riding a dragon, flying to him, and placing his hand on his shoulder. "You are a child of heaven. Your mission is to preserve life. Remember, kindness is the strongest weapon." The next morning, Giong woke up early, clasped his hands in front of the communal house yard, bowed 3 times, and then declared, "From today on, I will practice. When the armor, horses, and whips arrive, I will march." The villagers were once again excited. They took turns building the practice ground. A large grassy area was leveled, bamboo flags were planted, and stakes were planted as targets. Giong practiced whipping with bamboo, swinging so hard that the bamboo poles broke in half. He learned to move flexibly, to fight in a narrow space, to counterattack with instinct as if he had been a warrior for many lifetimes. Giong's mother, from a skinny woman, now seemed more radiant and stronger. She became the mother of the whole village, cooking every day, spreading hope to everyone. The orphans followed Giong's mother to learn how to cook, learn fairy tales, and learn to be good people. And then, one sunny morning, the trumpet sounded. The envoys arrived with 3 treasures: iron armor, iron whip, and iron horse. The people filled the field. The sun was red like a sacred fire. Giong stepped out, his body towering like a mountain. He wore the armor. It fit perfectly. He held the whip. It was as light as a willow branch. He walked to the iron horse. A red spark suddenly spewed from its mouth. The whole village fell silent. Then, Giong said loudly, "The time has come. For the people, for the country, I will go into battle." The horse neighed loudly, stomped its hooves, and fire shot from its mouth. Giong jumped on the horse's back, brandishing the whip, his eyes shining like a god. Without anyone to guide him, the iron horse carried Giong across the field, leaving behind red dust flying into the sky and cheers like rolling waves. When the first light of the morning shone on the plain, the whole village of Fudong was awake. The sound of war drums echoed from afar, mixed with the rumbling of horse hoofs. The villagers lined up on both sides of the dirt road leading from the communal house to the field, where Giong and the iron horse were ready. Giong wore a silver-shining iron armor, his shoulders as broad as the door of the communal house, his gait steady. Each step he took made the ground shake slightly. He stopped in front of the house, bowed his head to greet his mother. "Mother, stay here, take care of your health." When I return, the country will be free of enemies. Mrs. Tam hugged her son, speechless. She just looked deeply into Zhang's eyes, nodded, then quietly retreated inside. The villagers on the side of the road bowed their heads to greet him. An old man knelt on the ground, his hands trembling. "Warrior, protect the country." The iron horse neighed loudly, its mouth spewing red fire. Zhang galloped straight across the field, leaving behind a long trail of fire like a meteor tearing through the sky and earth. The children ran after them, shouting, "Defeat the enemy. Save the people." In less than a day, Zhang had reached the northern front line, where the army was camped like a pack of wolves. They had built a camp with animal skins, hanging skulls around the camp to show their power. The enemy general was in Vong Hak Long, a tall man with a long beard and blood-red eyes, sitting on the back of a war elephant, commanding more than 10,000 soldiers. As soon as they saw lightning coming from the horse's mouth and a warrior in iron armor galloping from afar, the army was in chaos. Zhang did not say a word. He rushed into the middle of the camp. The iron whip in his hand swung and killed 10 soldiers in one stroke. He whipped the whip at the general's tent. The wind blew, the earth moved. Fire spewed from the iron horse and burned the camp flag. The screams echoed throughout the forest. The enemy counterattacked. They shot arrows like rain, but all broke when they hit the iron armor. Zhang rode his horse around the camp, whipping his whip to both sides, each blow causing a series of soldiers to fall. The iron horse did not stop, but kept breathing fire, burning down the tents and knocking down the flagpoles. The remaining soldiers divided their troops to surround them tightly, but Zhang rode his horse around as fast as the wind, leaving them no time to react. When the third army approached, Zhang shouted loudly, raised his whip high, and lashed it like thunder. The ground cracked open, and dust flew into the sky. The army was defeated in just 3 moments. General Hak Long was furious, and personally led 5,000 elite soldiers to charge in. He rode an armored elephant, swinging his large axe. But with just one swing of his whip, Zhang broke the axe. Before Hak Long could dodge, the next whip hit his chest, and he was thrown off the elephant's back and fell onto the battlefield. At that moment, Zhang lifted him up with one hand and threw him straight into the middle of the fleeing soldiers. The entire army was broken, without a commander, and soldiers fled in disarray like ants from a broken nest. Some surrendered, others threw down their weapons and ran north. By afternoon, the battlefield was left with only enemy corpses and the Vietnamese were flag flying. The people of the border region came out of hiding, bowed their heads and worshipped Zhang as the savior. Zhang just smiled, swung his whip one last time, then rode his horse back to the capital, accepting no glory or waiting for any reward. Zhang continued to pursue the remnants of the army for 3 days and 3 nights. On the way, wherever he went, there were traces of the iron horse's fiery footprints, leaving scorched paths winding around the mountains and hills. He did not stop anywhere, leaving behind only cheers, tears of joy, and boundless gratitude from the people. Arriving in Kin Bak, Zhang discovered a large army of invaders preparing to counterattack. They set up camp on a high hill, buried bamboo mines, set up traps, were fully armed, and had powerful elephants and horses. This time, the enemy leader was General Thiat Vu, the younger brother of Hak Long, who was known to be more brutal and cunning than his brother. Facing such a large force, Zhang did not hesitate. He rode his horse straight into the middle of the camp, swinging his iron whip like thunder. The enemy troops were in chaos, shooting arrows, raising spears, and throwing steel nets, but all were useless. Each strike of Zhang burned down a row of tents and knocked down a row of soldiers. But in the midst of the fierce battle, when Zhang swung his whip to hit the enemy's command tower, the iron whip suddenly cracked. A crack sound rang out. The whip had broken. The entire battlefield seemed to fall silent for a moment. The enemy soldiers cheered. "The divine man's weapon has broken. He will lose." General Thiat Vu immediately ordered his troops to surround him from all 4 sides. But Zhang was not shaken. He looked around, then suddenly urged his horse to gallop across the field. By the roadside, there was a thick bamboo grove. Zhang galloped forward, pulling out a bamboo as big as his bicep. His hands clenched, his eyes flashing with fierce light. "If the iron has broken, the bamboo will replace it." The divine soldier can be anything when his patriotism is still burning. Giong swung the bamboo like a weapon given by heaven. Every time the bamboo fell, rocks and dirt flew up, and the enemy soldiers fell like straw. The army was terrified, their souls flying away. They had never seen such a powerful weapon. General Thiat Vu panicked and ordered the army to retreat, but it was too late. Zhang rode his horse at full speed, breathing fire to burn the large camp, using bamboo to repel dozens of counterattacks. The sky darkened, dust flew everywhere. From afar, people saw a red light like divine fire descending from the sky. In less than a day, the entire army was destroyed. Zhang did not chase after the escapees. He just stood in the middle of the battlefield, planted a bamboo stick in the ground, his eyes determined. This is the land we protect. From now on, no enemy can cross it. The people of Kin Bak immediately came, offering gifts, calling Zhang a saint. Some brought cakes and fruits, some offered cloth, some held flower branches and bowed their heads. But Zhang only smiled, nodded slightly, then turned and got on his horse. After the final battle in Kin Bak, the country was completely cleared of the invaders. The blackened fields began to revive. People returned to rebuild their houses, sow new seeds, and vitality revived along the banks of the Ni River. The news of victory reached the capital, making King Hung extremely happy. The king sent an envoy with gifts, precious silk, jade, incense, to invite Zhang to return to the court to confer the title of king, and to reward him with gold, silver, and land. The envoy traveled for 2 days to get there. But when they reached Soc Hill, where the army had just been destroyed, they only saw black burn marks on the ground, a few abandoned weapons, and Zhang was nowhere to be seen. The people said, after the victory, Zhang rode his horse straight up Soc Mountain. No one dared to block his way. He went alone, without saying a word. The envoy immediately climbed Soc Sun Mountain. Halfway up, they saw a white rock area with a giant's footprint imprinted deep into the ground. Nearby, horse hoof prints were imprinted on the rock as if it were red hot. And then, before their eyes, there was only a misty mountain peak. Zhang had disappeared. Legend has it that when he reached the top of the mountain, Zhang stopped, turned his head to look at the plain, where the small village of Fu Dong was, where his mother was waiting. He did not return. He closed his eyes and prayed silently. I have fulfilled my mission. Please become a god to forever guard the country. The iron horse suddenly neighed one last time, then slowly flew into the air, carrying Zhang with it. Heaven and earth shook. Light from the horse's body shone brightly like a shooting star in the middle of the day. Then everything disappeared into the white clouds. On the top of the mountain, there was only an empty land left, where people later built a temple to worship him. The whole country discussed. Some said Zhang was the son of heaven, sent down to save the people in times of danger. Some said he was the spirit of the mountains and rivers, the incarnation of a local god. But everyone called him by a common name, Saint Giong. After hearing the news, King Hung went all the way to Soc Mountain, built a temple, and conferred the title of Fu Dong Tien Vong on Zhang, a saint riding an iron horse, with extraordinary strength and absolute patriotism. Every year, in the spring, the villagers hold a Zhang festival. Children are dressed in armor, ride wooden horses, and reenact the heroic battle. Bamboo branches are chosen as whips and are swung to the resounding sound of drums and gongs. Folklore believes that every time the Zhang festival is held, the country is peaceful, the people are safe, the sky is calm, and the sea is calm. Zhang is no longer a legendary character. He has become a symbol, a role model for all generations, a reminder that, in every child, no matter how ordinary, there can be hidden the power of a saint if they know how to live for a great cause. Centuries have passed since the day Saint Giong ascended to heaven, but the mark of that hero is still deeply imprinted in the hearts of the nation. Not only a legend passed down through words, Zhang has become an immortal symbol of patriotism, indomitable spirit, and extraordinary solidarity. In Fu Dong village, where Zhang was born, people preserve every inch of land, every bamboo tree, every old wall as treasures. The communal house where Zhang's mother once prayed for a child, the field where Zhang first stood up, have all become sacred relics. People tell the story of Zhang to their children and grandchildren since they were in the cradle, not only to remember a hero, but also to teach them how to live with ideals and responsibility for the country. The Zhang Festival in SOC Sun and Fudong is not only a religious activity, it is an opportunity for tens of thousands of people to review history and remind each other of national pride. Children playing the role of Zhang, riding a wooden horse, holding a bamboo whip, is the oath of the next generation to their ancestors, to continue the spirit of Tan Zhang. Many writers, historians, poets, artists have taken the image of Zhang as an endless source of inspiration. Zhang appears in poetry as a guiding star, in music like the beat of a drum urging people's hearts, in painting like a stroke of hope in a dark picture. Not only that, Tan Zhang also stepped out of the framework of legend to become a symbol of education. The name of the young hero was given to schools, streets, awards for outstanding youth, as a way to remind that every Vietnamese person can become the Zhang of their time, if they know how to dedicate themselves to the community. That Zhang's patriotism is not empty slogans. It is action. It is the spirit of being ready to stand up when the country needs it. It is the determination to rise up, despite coming from a poor background. It is the desire to protect the people, even if the body must become a spirit. From the Phu Dong field to SOC Sun Mountain, from the mother's lullaby in the dark night to the sound of the Zhang Festival drums echoing at the beginning of the year, Saint Giong lives forever. Not as a distant saint, but as a brother, a son, a soldier, existing in the heart of every Vietnamese. Therefore, when we see bamboo growing straight, when we hear the sound of wooden horse hooves, when we read about young people dedicating themselves to the country, we remember Zhang. And we know that fire has never gone out.